Morning, everybody. My name is Tatiana Calderon, and I am the Autism Initiative Coordinator here at Synergia's Metropolitan Parent Center. Before we begin with today's presentation, I just wanted to share a few words about Synergia. Synergia is a multi-service agency located in Manhattan that has been supporting New Yorkers with disabilities and their families for more than 40 years. We offer a rich source of information and training tailored for parents, including parents whose primary language is not English, or for who they themselves have special training needs. We help them participate more effectively in their children's education and development, and we partner with professional and policymakers to improve outcomes for all children with disabilities. Synergia is Spanish for synergy, is one of New York City's 3 federally funded parent centers committed to serving people with disabilities and their families with an added focus on communities of color and the economically disadvantaged. Synergia creates an innovative programs ranging from transitional housing for homeless families who have children with disabilities, community residence for adults with developmental disabilities, parenting classes for adults with parents with intellectual disabilities, and parenting and education advocacy training for parents of parents with children with disabilities. So also I want to say thank you to Beth Sola here for being here with us to give us this wonderful presentation today about consent. So thank you, Beth, and welcome to Synergia. So before we get to it, I just want to share a little bit of information about her. So Beth Sola, MA, has 25 years of extensive experience working with individuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities. As a bilingual special educator working with individuals from infancy to adulthood and their families, currently as a self-direction broker to create inclusive opportunities and support self-determined individuals to live their best lives. As a parent to a young adult on the autism spectrum, she also understands the importance of partnering with other parents to start the conversation about healthy relationships and sexuality education from an early age. Beth is on the advisory board and leads parent workshops in collaboration with Elevatus Trainings. Welcome to Synergia, Beth. I'm so glad you can join us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Tatiana. Thank you, Synergia, once again for providing this opportunity. Yeah, very important. Thank you so much. And yeah, so, my introduction there is, I do have, a lifelong working in this field, and I do have a 29-year-old. He just turned 29, who is on the spectrum. And I think, my journey to really become actively involved in this and sharing information and networking with parents certainly came, through my son. And, all the ups and downs and all of the right way I did things and the wrong way I did things, or that I are not the best way you handle things, and really looking for resources. And I'm really happy to share this with everyone today. I will put up my I have I will share the screen. I will put up my PowerPoint and go through that, and then I know at the end certainly we have questions that will address. And so thank you so much. Okay, so let me share this. Okay. Oh, wait a second. Hold on a second. Technologically, I'm okay. Let's see if we got it now. Okay. There we go. Start it right here. Okay, let me make this a little bit smaller. Today is talking about consent. Certainly a huge topic and a very important one. And how do we educate our children, our young adults to understand that, to be safe, which is probably one of our most important concerns due to their vulnerability, and for them once again to have healthy relationships, to be a self-advocate, and to express their wants and their desires. Okay. Okay. Why do people with disabilities need and want to learn about sexuality? Through Elevatus training and through their conversations and their working with self-advocates, they are saying that they want to learn to have healthy relationships, just like everybody else. They don't want to be lonely. And I've said before that during COVID, I think we all really experienced what loneliness can be and how difficult it is. And just for we are social beings, and everyone, disability or not disability, and people want to have good, healthy relationships and people that are close to them. Um, they want to be able to make informed choices. And how important is that? Good choices, education leads to better into making informed choices, which leads to really a healthier life, healthier relationships. So we can pick the right person, and don't we all want to pick the right person, to that special person to be in our lives. Um, to help for help with the toughest part of the relationship, making decisions, just like and making decisions and having relationships that last. So important for all of us, and so we can be safe. And once again, as I said before, I think as parents and as caregivers, our first concern is for our children, for our children, our young adults, as they go through their life, to be safe. Um, and because we all have desires and needs, and that's okay. It's often easy if it's for parents to, I think that if we are extremely protective of our children, of course, that goes without saying. And it is often easy to look at children with disabilities as, not having sexual interests or not having interest in having relationships. And relationships come in all shapes and sizes. And I think it's really important, even if they, might have difficulty articulating that, to be really aware that we all, once again, we're social beings. We want to have relationship. So that people know their rights. Absolutely, to stand up for yourself, to protect yourself, to be safe, to let other people know what you want, to know what, for our children, to know what their rights are, and to be able to stand up for them. So we can be sexual advocates, sexual self-advocates, and not just self-advocates. And I think that when we think about our health, there's our physical health, there's our emotional and our mental health, which certainly, once again, through COVID has come right to the forefront. But there's also our sexual health, which is truly important. Our sexual health is about our health in general. It's about our bodies, and it's about our understanding our bodies and understanding healthy relationships. Illinois self-advocates have said, I want to know more so I can decide what is right for me. It's my body and my choice. I didn't receive any information in school or from my provider. I learned by the school of hard knocks. I'm still trying to work through the trauma of learning the hard way. And once again, our children with disabilities are often taken out of classes in school that do provide sexuality education because they believe they don't need it, they won't understand it, or they're just kind of given very bare minimum information, and their opportunity to learn it, they're not often they're not up off the they don't have the opportunities that I would say a lot of neurotypical individuals have, where they can, talk well, and they can articulate themselves with friends. They don't the social connections, and also communication difficulties. And what is often being learned, how are they learning about sexuality and relationships? What they see in movies, what they see on TV, what they see in the social media, which is really that's not the healthiest images, the healthiest delivery of what healthy relationships are. We had classes at the group home in the past, but it's been a long while. I can't remember what I learned. And once again, all of us, our children in particular, need to have information presented repeatedly to them over their life, over their lifespan, and in different ways, by conversations, by direct teaching, by informal learning with people who care about them, that are in their circle of support. And it's an ongoing conversation. And I think that if we even think about ourselves, um, our bodies, our health, our relationships, it's an ongoing conversation. It's not an hour and a half conversation. It's not 10 sessions with professional conversation. It's hundreds and thousands of conversations, be they longer or short, over the length of our lifetime. um, So, what is sexual self advocacy? It's speaking up for yourself sexually. And sexually is about our body, about our health, about our relationships, about how we feel about who we are, um, how we feel about our sexual orientation, how we feel about our body, how we feel our self esteem. It's really who we are, and that embodies everything about who we are and what we are and what we believe. It's about getting information and getting correct information, medically correct information. Um, it's about taking a stand, having an opinion, having your opinion heard and acknowledged and respected, and being able to have a ongoing discussion about your feelings, and having people of trust and safe environments where you can talk about that. It's about saying to whoever, this is my choice. Um, this is my body. This is my life. It's about stating your sexual limits and desires with your partner, and respecting others' limits and desires. So it's about saying yes or no and having that respected. And when yes or no is said to someone, to likewise respect that when someone else says that to you. Um, it's about starting to do what you want with relationships, and having the support to understand that and to talk about it. What's going well in a relationship, and what someone might be struggling with or not understand, or need a listening ear, someone to talk to. Um, Developmental disabilities and sexuality. So today it's really the focus is on examining why people with intellectual and developmental disabilities are at risk of sexual violence, sexual abuse, reviewing tips for working with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and to explore strategies for teaching consent to them. I think as we start to, as one starts to talk about having these conversations, where do we start? How do we start? When do we start? It's really important for us to reflect as parents and as caregivers, um, about what are the messages that we have received growing up, and what our own feelings are about talking about sexuality, our own comfort level, um, and to think about what were the messages as well that we received growing up, if there were negative messages, and what were the positive messages that we received growing up or as adults. So that we can really carry on and have these discussions, and this support to our loved ones. Negative messages are, that our children are here, would often hear is, you aren't a sexual person. um, and it's not uncommon for parents to, and caregivers and loved ones, to think my child has not expressed any desire, so therefore, I guess there is no interest at all in having relationships. um, you can't make good choices, right? We protect our children. We don't want them to get hurt. We want them to be safe. And so it's very easy to step in as the role as, I will make all the choices for you. You shouldn't be in a relationship. Um, You don't want to get hurt. You don't want all those problems. You don't, in parents, it's a scary thing, I think, for parents, for our children to enter in a relationship. How do we handle it? How do we keep them safe? How do we, prevent them from making mistakes? Um, and then those are things that we all struggle with and have to work through, and it's a lifelong journey, certainly. Positive messages that we receive and we can give to our children. Sexual feelings are normal and they're healthy. Everyone feels them, right? It's okay to ask questions. And by giving them that sense to create a safe, trusting environment is truly important. And I think what we all want most is that our children can come and talk to us when they are worried about something, when they're unsure about something. It's extremely important for trust. And it's okay to want to be in a relationship. We're all social beings. We're all sexual beings from the time we're born right up until the time we die. Um, why are our children at risk? Um, Although it is never the person who is it's the person who is abused fault. Why are they more at risk? Um, they're at risk because they are so vulnerable. Their difficulty in understanding relationships, difficulty in expressing, articulating how they feel. Um, I think in express, once again, in expressing their opinion, feeling they can express their opinion and their opinion will be heard. I also think that oftentimes our children, by the nature of their education, are taught to comply, to do as they're told, which we all like our children to do as they are told. And but once again, that leads into something that's called learned compliance. And at the end of the day, do we really want our children to do everything that they are told? If someone tells you to jump off a bridge, are you going to jump off a bridge? If someone tells you to go into a room and take your clothes off, do you want them to do that? So we have to also give them the opportunity to say no, and to know that they can, and that it will be respected. But I think that's often it's a big challenge. It's certainly a big challenge. And once again, if our children have difficulty communicating verbally, no, or even, there are people who will, physically, no, they'll push you away. But to once again, when someone is uncomfortable, when our children are uncomfortable, certainly respect that and understand that. And I would also say that a really important concept to teach our children is that, or to understand, if our children don't want to hug someone, be it their grandmother, their aunt, their sister, their brother, their parent, don't make them. Right? Don't make them. If someone doesn't want to show affection in that moment, don't make them do it. Um, and why are people with intellectual and developmental disabilities at risk? Once again, the lack of education on healthy relationships and in sexuality. That education is not offered. It's not offered in schools. If it is, it's very, very basic. And they're taken out of the classes. We as parents we struggle with how to teach them, how to tackle these conversations, which are uncomfortable. Will our children understand what we're trying to say to them? How do I present information to them in a way that they will understand? When do I start talking about it? How much information do I give them? And what information do I give them? And I think that it's important, once again, to start young, just by teaching our children what are the anatomically correct names of their body parts. just they know them. And from there, teaching about, public and private, and having these conversations day in and day out through their lifespan about relationships, about social skills. Um, and let's see what not to be thought of our we often think of our children as not as adults, but they're considered children, really through their lifespan. They are often emotionally, they're younger than their chronological age, and will treat them much younger, but it's as if they were much younger. But once again, the information that they need, they need to be presented with information that is in accordance with their chronological age and not their developmental age, because their bodies are developing right along as the body of anybody else. So that's really important to remember, and to educate our children, um, and that provides them with protection for themselves. Um, Oftentimes we look at our children and we will accept behaviors because we look at them, consider them to be much younger than they are, certainly developmentally, as opposed to chronological age, and we'll accept a lot of behaviors that typically you would not see in someone of that chronological age. Being wanting to hug everyone. A neurotypical 29-year-old does not hug everyone that they see. Um, but if you have a child that really is affectionate and loves to hug everyone, they would, they would be very willing and want to hug everyone to show that they care. Um, they enjoy touching somebody's hair. How appropriate is it for a teen, a young adult, to be going up and touching people's hair? You're coming into someone's private space, and it's really important um, to work on that with our children, and expect them to have behaviors, right, that are typical chronologically of that age, and to set the modeling and work towards that. um, Once again, education is to meet their needs. Education that is to provide the information in a way that they can understand for their developmental level, and for their learning style is so important. And so therefore, so much of this has to be really individualized uh, to your loved one. Our children often, they don't have the social opportunities or the relationships beyond the family, outside of the family circle, to really develop these skills and to ask the questions, and to have the learning that neurotypically developing children might have. You often have kids who, kind of like the treehouse talk, right? You're a young teen, you're in high school, and you're getting together with your friends, and you're talking about stuff and kind of exploring who you are as a person and what you are, and asking questions. And our children with developmental disabilities, they don't have those opportunities, or the ability to often ask those questions. The vocabulary is missing. And our children often, once again, lack friendships. Their friendships are their circle of friendships often very limited. And they perhaps have friends that have the same difficulties that they do in communicating. The lack of social opportunities, and once again, missing out on that informal learning, as I talked about, just sitting down when you're sitting out at the park with your friend, talking about things, talking about your boyfriend, talking about your girlfriend, talking about your relationships, what's happening to your body. So they're missing out on those. Um, for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, um, it's important to give them that sense that they own their own bodies, right? Um, that bodily autonomy is so important. That they do have control of their lives, and within that control, they most likely need supported decision making. But then so do we all. We all need someone that we can talk to and help us work through what we are feeling and what we are experiencing. They need to be given that empowered to make their own decisions, and to think through, once again, have that support as to why a decision is a good decision, or one that is perhaps not in their best interest. And if they do make a decision that's not in their best interest, well, let's go back and think about it. We all make decisions that we think about afterwards. Oh, I perhaps shouldn't have done that. Next time I won't do that. Um, and that's part of our growth, and that's part of our learning, and that's part of building a really strong support network around all of us. Um, Having dignity. I think that when I started out on this journey personally, it was certainly for my son's safety, because of his vulnerability. I was scared. I didn't want him to be put in a position. I wanted to protect him. I didn't want him to be hurt. And as I moved along through it in my personal progression, it's about health. It's about him having his bodily autonomy, letting him make decisions, but it's about his dignity as well. And I think that's right at the top of my list for him. It's about his human dignity as a person, and his having relationships, um, forming positive relationships. Once again, understanding what is healthy and what's not healthy, and talking about it. And if you are in a relationship, be it a friendship relationship, or a romantic relationship, or a relationship at work, or a relationship with your neighbors, what is going well and what's not going well, what's healthy and what's not healthy, and learning how to set boundaries and learning how to resolve um, you know difficult situations, or walk away from it, from a difficult situation. And once again, to just decrease abuse, uh, because our children are very vulnerable, and we want to educate and reduce the abuse as much as we possibly can. um, Beliefs. I think that it's important to instill in our children positive messages to give to our children. Is It's my body, it's my mind, it's my life, and I get what to decide what is right for me. And once again, I think that wrapped around, enveloped around that, is supported decision making, having people who care, having people who listen, having our children feel that they are being heard, that they have a voice, and they have people to support them through all of the positive things and the things that have been more challenging for them as well. It's okay to ask questions about sexuality and relationships. Um, Once again, creating that safe environment. And the more we talk about it with our children, um, and in little tidbits, it's those thousands of short conversations over a lifetime rather than one big talk, right? The more we talk about it, the more we normalize it. And the more we normalize it, the more comfortable we become. And there certainly will be questions, and there will be situations where we don't have the answer right away, but we'll find out what the answer is and we'll work through it. And I think that if you are, just by addressing this and starting these conversations, by feeling uncomfortable, you should pat yourself on the back, because we are getting into the out of our comfort zone, but we are addressing it. We are working through it. We're normalizing it more. We're feeling more comfortable with it. We're providing education and positive messages about our children's health, their bodies and their relationships, which at the end is that's a win-win for everybody. um, Everybody is a sexual being, including me. Everyone is. And once again, relationships come in all shapes and sizes. So that's really, really, I think, important to remember. There are many types of relationships, and I have the right to be in any type of relationship that I choose. And once again, having a strong circle of support around around your child, around an individual. And we all need that to help work through questions, help work through challenges, help work through, talk about what's going really well and what is more of a challenge, and how do we turn challenges into positive outcomes. And I deserve to be in a healthy relationship. Everybody deserves to be in a healthy relationship. Um, Remember, once again, it's your body, it's your life, and you get to decide what is right for you. And I think that also when it comes to talking about with your body, even when we take our children to their medical checkups, be it once a year, I certainly have been guilty of that, and it's very easy. We speak for them at a medical appointment, but to really empower our children to speak up and answer questions for themselves. And we're there to support them if we need be. And if there are questions that need to be asked, right, practice ahead of time. These are the questions to be asked, and write them down if you need to, right? And if I go to appointments with my son, now with his doctor, I will go in. I encourage him to speak up for himself, to answer the questions himself. And when he does do his physical, I will say, I'm going to step out. I'm going to give you, that privacy with your doctor, and then I will come back in. And that is what my son requests. And I know other people, their children, if you ask, would you like me to stay or would you like me to leave? And give them that participation in it. I know other individuals, no, I would prefer you to stay with me. Perfect. But you're including them in that decision. I think that's really important. Let's see. How can we make sure that people we care for firmly believe that that it is their body and they get to decide what is right for them? Once again, I think it's creating a safe environment. It's talking about their bodies, right? Giving them correct information, medically correct, anatomically correct information according to their age. And giving them a safe environment to talk within with which they can talk. Let them ask questions, provide answers honestly to them to the best of your ability. And if you don't have an answer, that's okay. You can always come back with the answer. And if you do give an answer that you later reflect on, this perhaps is not the answer I wanted to give or the message that I wanted to give, you can go back and talk about that as well. And I think that's important for our children to realize that, it's an ongoing conversation. We can come back and talk about things. We can reflect about something and think, perhaps that wasn't the best answer. Let's talk about that again. But to have those conversations, those thousands of little tiny conversations over a lifetime that normalize this topic. So what is consent? Consent is a freely chosen yes. Freely chosen means getting a yes without lies, without threats, without pressure, without blackmail, intimidation, bribes, or force. Two questions have to be asked in order to decide if it is true consent or not. Did the person say yes, and was it freely chosen? If the answer to both questions is yes, that indicates it is consent. Examples of consent. Here are some examples of what is not okay to say or do or get someone, in this we're talking today, to have sex with you. Saying I love you when you don't really mean it. A lie. A threat would be saying, if you don't have sex with me, I'll find someone who will. Constant pressure. Saying, come on, please, just this time, it'll be okay. Blackmail. Saying, if you don't have sex with me, I will tell someone you're a real jerk. Intimidation. For example, saying, "You're such a baby. When are you going to grow up?" Bribes, saying, "I lent you my CDs. Now you owe me. You'll have to kiss me for 10 minutes." Or forcing a person to have sex. Physical force to have sex is called rape, and that's illegal. And I think just kind of backing up as you look at all of those examples of what it's not okay, it's not consent, is just through our daily interactions with our children. If they say, "Do you want to can I say to my son and my child, for example, can I borrow your can I borrow your nice winter jacket? I like it a lot better than mine, and it fits me." And they say no, and like, "Come on, I really want it. Will you give it to me? You should be nice. That's not being very nice." You're pressuring, you're pushing them for something, and they said no. And it's really important to respect that, so they have that sense. Can I go? My son, he's very adamant that his bedroom is his personal private space, and he has everything organized exactly as he wants it, and he doesn't want me going into his bedroom to reorganize things, to go in there, whatever, to clean up, to tidy up. And if I need to set something in his bedroom, I will always ask him, do you give me permission? Can I drop this in your bedroom? And if he says no, I'll say, "Okay, I'll leave it on the kitchen counter for you." If he says yes, I'll say, "I'll just step in and then I'll step out." But I ask him permission. And if he says no, I won't do it. Because for him to be able to say no and respect it, he has to be given that ability to say no and to have it accepted. And we see that all through our just little things through our daily lives that we all do. And I think it's really important to to think about that as we're having conversations. Consent stories. Here are some stories where just kind of to go through that, examples of what would be considered consent and what is not consent. And I would say, just going back to the previous slide, once again, it's, I think it's so typical that when I recently just visited my grandson. He's 3 years old, and my son, said to him, one night it was time for him to go to bed, and he said, "Oh, why don't you give your Oma a hug before you go to bed?" And of course, he wanted his mommy time, he wanted his daddy time, and he was, he looked at me and went, "No." And my son was, "Oh, come on, give her a hug." And I said, "Nope, he doesn't need to. Another day he will." And I think that's really important from a young age. Even from a very tender age of 3, if he doesn't want to hug me, that's okay. There'll be another day that he'll come up and give me a hug. So it's really, really important. Consent stories. So we'll just kind of read through them here. And once again, the 2 questions that are to be asked if something is consent is, did the person say yes? And was it freely chosen? And not based on lies or threats or pressure or blackmail or intimidation, bribes or force. So the first example would be, you're going out for pizza with a friend. When it comes time to order, you ask your friend, "Do you want pepperoni on that?" And your friend says, "Sure, sounds good." So is that consent? Why or why not? Did the person say yes? Yes, he did. Yes, the person did. Was it freely chosen? It was freely chosen. So yes, that's consent. And example not, "Would you want pepperoni on that?" And they were to say yes, and then you say, "Oh, well, I don't want, the other person, I don't want pepperoni, we have to have something else, we've got to have mushrooms on it." That's not consent, right? One person asks the other if they want to have sexual intercourse, and the other person says yes. They have sex and they enjoy it. So is that consent? Once again, the 2 questions to ask, did the person say yes? And was it freely chosen? As it's presented here, I believe so. The person said yes, and there's no indication that they were coerced or they were pushed into it or lies were involved, and that indicates consent. One person says, let's have sex. And the other says, no, I want to talk first. The first partner says, if you don't, I'll tell everyone you did anyway. The other partner agrees, but feels kind of yucky about it. So once again, is this consent? Did the person say yes? Was it freely chosen? In this example, no, it wasn't. So therefore, it does not indicate consent. And the fourth one, one person sees a person on the street and thinks they're very sexy. They go up to them and touch their breast. Is this consent? You ask the two questions. Did the person say yes? The person did not say yes. So right there, it's not consent. Was it freely chosen? They didn't. They didn't even ask. The person just went right up and physically imposed themselves in their private space and touched them. And so no, it's not consent. And once again, I would say if someone goes up to another person and touches their hair, if they didn't ask if they could touch their hair first, if they didn't ask, then it's once again that's not consent, and you're coming into the personal space of someone. It's really important. You are with a sweetheart and you are kissing. You want more touch, so you go to move your hand down to their genitals. They stop your hand and push it away. Is this consent? No, it is not. The person did not say yes. And they're actually saying no, they are physically pushing you away. The next scenario, one person starts kissing their partner kisses back and starts taking off their clothes. Is this consent? What we see right here is that they didn't ask, they just initiated that the kissing. Their partner appears from here to kiss back and starts taking off their clothes. It appears that there's not any desire not to do it, any coercion to continue. And they are partners, and they are happy to be with each other and to become more intimate with each other. The next scenario, Jim says, let's have sex. Amanda says, I don't really feel like it. Jim says, come on, please, 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 I really want to. Amanda says, I don't really feel like it. Jim says, please, come on, I really want to do it now. Amanda says yes and feels okay about it. Is this consent? She does say yes, but was it freely chosen? I think once again, Jim was, really pushing her, and it wasn't really a freely chosen yes. One person says to the other person, I love you and I want to have sex with you. But he really does not love the other person. He just wants to have sex. The other person says, okay. Is this consent? Once again, the person says, okay. The person gives an affirmative response, but really was being presented for a situation. The person was lying to them. I love you and I want to have sex with you. That's based on a lie. And when it's based on a lie, that's not consent, true consent. So if you were to, once again, consent based on the two questions, did the person say yes? If yes was freely, was the yes freely chosen? If the person said yes and the yes was freely chosen, that means consent. If the person said yes, but the yes was not freely chosen, that's not consent. And if the person says no and it was not freely chosen, it's not consent. You say two no's, that's no consent. Um, Learning to say no um, is it's an important skill in communication. Is the ability to say is being able to say no and to have your no respected, heard and respected. I think oftentimes as parents too, we have our children will say no, and we get upset because they say no to us, and it can kind of be that can be a hard pill to swallow, right? When your kids say they say no to you, but I think it's always important when they do say no to look at the situation and figure out if to understand it and let them know that you're hearing their no and you're respecting it, and certainly that they're not it's a no that would put them in danger or a no that is unsafe, but it's really important to hear that and to let them know that you are hearing them, from something as simple as, can I go into your bedroom? No. Right, to can I borrow your hat? Can I borrow your jacket? No. So it's really important for our children to be able to say no, and for that to be heard and respected. um, and so here we have practice role playing with these situations, but I would say when you go home during your interactions with your children and they do say no to you, listen to it, think it through. What do they say? What are they? What's the reason behind this no? Right, and to respect it. We say no to our children, we expect them to comply with that. So I think we really need to hear and acknowledge our children's voices as well. Um, I'm going to ask you, so once again, thinking about how you're going to say no and what's that mean. And then also understanding our body language and how we stand up for ourselves and how we communicate that. And don't offer other reasons or excuses. You can say no. I think we're all many of us are guilty of that. We'll say no and then we go into this large explanation of why we're saying no, and oftentimes we just need just a simple no. Do you want to go to the movies tonight? No. Thanks for the invitation, but no. And we'll often think, oh, I've got to give a big explanation of why I can't. I'm visiting so and so. I can't do it tonight, whatever. You can just say no. So once again, if you're role playing with your children, or just in your day-to-day conversations, interacting with them, understanding, hearing their no's once again, but once again, can you loan me $5 if someone says no? How are you going to answer that? Oh, come on, give me the $5. I know you got $5. Or you're going to say, okay, just thought I'd ask, but that's fine. Can you loan me your bike? When someone says no, right? Do you accept that? Or if you were to say, can your brother borrow your bike? And you say no, or your friend, can they borrow your bike? And your child says no, to accept that as well. And perhaps you don't have to loan everything that you have. We have special things and we don't have to loan them if we don't want to, and we don't necessarily need an explanation of why we don't want to loan it either. Will you have sex with my brother? No. You don't have to give an explanation of why it's a no. right? May I touch you? It will be our little secret. Um, we're getting, and then we're really getting into you want them to be able to say no. You want, and once again, when it comes to, I think building an environment of trust and a safe environment to talk, that your children know, as you start to normalize these conversations and they can come to you and they can talk to you, is that secrets are an environment, a culture of keeping secrets within a family is, it's certainly not healthy as well. And to be told to keep secrets is, often a sign of abuse. So once again, certainly we're in the format that we're in today. We're not role playing and having that more interactive conversations or experiences. But once again, I think when you go back and in your day-to-day interactions with your children, with your loved ones, with the people that you support, think about it, things to reflect on. How does it feel when you say no, right? What makes it hard to say no? You don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, right? And certainly there are, many of us are yes people. We just don't want to say no. We say yes to everything because we don't want to hurt, we don't want to hurt all other people's feelings. We want to be involved with everything. We want to do everything. And that comes about setting boundaries and understanding boundaries. And you can say no. What should you do if you keep saying no and the person keeps asking you? Who can you have your children understand who they can talk to? You can come to me, you can talk to me, you can talk to you can talk to your mother, you can talk to your father, you can talk to the close people in your lives who provide that trust to you. And it is important for your children to know who are those people around them that they can go and they can talk to. And even if I think that all of us as parents as well are very super in tuned, right? No one knows a child better than a parent. And people communicate verbally, some very articulate, other people to read the body language of our children as well. How are they feeling? They kind of seem off. They're a little bit worried. Something is changing, how they're feeling, how their emotions are. How are they communicating to us non-verbally to really understand if things are just not setting right with them, if they're struggling with something, if they want to communicate something. To really be in tune with that. And I think as parents we really are, and to acknowledge that, and to acknowledge how they're feeling and how they're communicating to us, either verbally or non-verbally. Accepting a no. Another communication skill is learning to take no as an answer. When someone says, my child says no to me, you stand back and you're like, what do you mean you said no to me? I'm an adult. you have to respect me. But I want my child to be able to say no to another adult who is he's putting my child in an unsafe situation, who is abusing him, who is pushing him to do something that he doesn't want to do. I want him to say no. And so you have to give him the opportunity, the ability to assert himself or herself to say no, and to be heard, and to know that they can expect other people to respect their answer. So once again, to reflect here, have you ever asked for something and gotten a no answer? And we certainly all have, and we've often been taken aback by it, right? But to think, how did it feel, and what were you asking for, and how did it feel? And our children will, they have those same feelings as well. I'm sure that, our children will, they'll roll their eyes at us, right? They'll say, I want to make this decision myself. You're always telling me what to do, or that, they turn away from us, their body language, to really, they feel those no's as well. So it's really important, I think, to constantly to be aware of it and to reflect on it. And it's a process. It's a process. 2 steps for accepting a no. If you get a no, ask for a second chance. Offer another activity. Offer another day. Do you want to go to the movie? No, I don't. Okay, you don't like action movies, but perhaps if it were a comedy, no, they simply don't want to go. Or offer, maybe, oh, okay, you don't want to go to the movie tonight, perhaps you're available, would you be interested in another going to the movies another night? No. You really to give them those opportunities, and once again respect it. And if you get another no, when you ask again, accept it gracefully. And by accepting, what does it mean by accepting gracefully is, not pressuring them, not not trying to coerce them into something, not letting them know that your feelings are hurt because you said no. Right, because if someone were to say to my child, take come over here and take off your clothes, or come over here and touch me, and my son were to say no, and that person would say, that really hurts my feelings that you're saying no to me. um, hmm. They're coercing them again. They're making them feel bad. They're making them feel bad. And I want to I want my child to be able to stand up for themselves, and for himself, or for herself, that they can say no. Accepting a no. You ask your friend to ride to for a ride to buy a pair of running shoes, and they say no. You can ask for another option, and what could that option be? Are you available tomorrow to perhaps to take me to buy some running shoes? And if they say no, once again, to accept, oh, thank you anyway, right? That's okay. But not to make them feel guilty, not to make them accept that they're simply not available to. Uh, Once again, it's practicing saying, I think for us as parents, practicing accepting no, right? And hearing the no. And, if it's a no that's going to put them in a situation which is unsafe or dangerous, you've got to, certainly talk about that. But really, just as we want to hear yes, that they're going along with something, we want them to be able to say no as well. It's for their safety. Once again, can I borrow $20? No, you can't. Perhaps later this week on payday, could you lend me $20? And they say no, accept it, accept it and say, thank you anyway. I appreciate you say, I appreciate you being honest with me, right? And keep moving forward. It's an individual practice. It's so many situations. It's thinking about it day, just really bringing it forward and reflecting on it, and all the opportunities that come along in our life for that. You're just to practice role playing, with your child. When you're watching TV or when you're watching movies and you see examples of someone saying no, talk about it. We saw that movie, and such a scene, someone said no. How was that? Did they stand up for themselves? Were they happy that they said no? Did the other person accept the no? Or did the other person try to move them or push them or coerce them or into make them feel bad to say yes? So there's little teachable moments all through our lives, day to day, that we can bring up and have one of those little short conversations. You go to your boss and you'd say, I'd like a $2 an hour raise. If your boss says no, or how do you give one more attempt to advocate for yourself, right? Or how do you move forward when they say no? You like me, want to ask me out. You say, will you go to the movies with me? And you want to hear a yes, certainly, if you're interested in another person, but that interest, particularly perhaps romantically, right, is not reciprocated, and that person might very well say no, and which is hard. It's heartbreaking too for someone, but to practice saying no and say, well, perhaps would you like to, there's a dance next week, and there's a whole bunch, there's a Halloween party coming up and all of our friends are going, would we, perhaps, hey, would you like to join us and go together? If maybe that opportunity would present itself, and if they say no, you have to accept it and move on, right? Then we lead into really more intimate relationships. I'm your partner and you ask me to have sex. And even, if you are in a very caring and loving relationship, there are times that you or your partner simply don't want to have sex, right, on a given night for whatever. And that's really important. Even in a caring and a loving relationship, you can say no, right? And you need to have consent as well in a caring and a loving relationship. Feelings about getting a no. It's okay to feel angry or to be disappointed to be told no. We all have those feelings because we're expecting a different answer, right? But it's not okay to hit that person, to yell at them, to threaten them because they said no, right? Remember, it's always important to remember that you can feel however you want, but you can't act however you want. I can feel disappointed, I can feel hurt, I can feel angry. We all have feelings, but that doesn't give me the right to hurt somebody else. And then if you have those feelings, when you feel disappointed, when you feel angry, when you feel upset, how do you address those feelings, those behaviors? What are the outlets? Who can you talk to? Who can you vent with? Right? And that's really important. I remember we were sitting around at the beach one day, and my son happened to be joining, and it was a bunch, me and a couple friends, and we're all sitting there enjoying this wonderful day, and we're all kind of venting and about this or that, about work or whatever it was. And I never expected it from my son. He's a very quiet person, and I think the big goal is certainly for him to become more assertive about things. And so we finished our conversation and we moved on to to something else. And I was really impressed because he stopped us and he said, wait a minute. He said, it's my turn to vent now. I want to tell you how I'm feeling about something. And it caught me by surprise. And I was so happy he did that. I was so happy that he felt comfortable, that he could say, okay, it's my turn. I'm having feelings about things that I'm upset about. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling upset. And I want to share that with you. And I want you to be here to support me about how I'm feeling. And I think that's really, it's important to acknowledge our feelings for our children, to let them talk to us about them, and to provide them a safe and a comfortable environment and trustworthy where they know they can express that. Consent is classic. This is just a very short video that I'll see if I can get this going. Hopefully this works. Here we go. Okay. If it loads on.
Will you dance with me?
I'd love to.
Can I take off your shirt? Yes, you may.
May I walk you home? That's very kind of you, but I like to go by myself. Okay. Would you like to see a motion picture with me?
Yes, I can even go tonight. So how far do you want to go?
I'd like to keep my clothes on.
Hey, do you want to spend the night? Well, that's okay. You don't really seem into it. I think we should wait.
Yes, you. I'd like that.
You want to keep going?
Not now.
It's okay. Just want you to be comfortable.
Want to make out?
Sorry, I'm too tired. Maybe another time.
Sounds good.
Are you ready?
Yes.
See if I can exit out of that one. Well, there we go. Okay. So yeah, consent is asking permission. It's just really important, right across the board in all aspects of our life. And I will say that, many of our children have, they need a lot of support through their daily living skills, and need to be provided with a lot of hands-on support, being it with, could be with feeding, with bathing, with grooming, with personal hygiene. And it is critical to, it's really critical to ask their permission, right? Can I comb your hair? Can I shave you? I'm going to, I'm going to wash your face right now. Is that okay? I'm going to wash your hair. When I have to wash your body, tell them, what you're going to do. Is it okay? Is it okay if I wash you right now? For their, for their dignity, right? For their asking permission, for their body autonomy, It's really critical, and it's so easy, especially, particularly if a person is nonverbal and if a person has limited mobility. We, just kind of go right in and let's wash your hair, and let's comb your hair, and let's brush your teeth, and let's wipe off your hands, and let's just put the shirt on over your head, or let's just take off your socks without acknowledging them, respecting their body autonomy. Really important to be aware of. Oh, nope. Let's see. How do I get to the next one? Oh, I hope this works. There we go. Okay. Once again, we all have different communication styles. There are people who are very assertive, can speak right up, people who are very shy, and people who are bossy. And to really, to understand the different communication styles. And I think you kind of trying to find a balance between that, right? If you're a shy person, to learn and provide the opportunities and the education and the experiences to speak up more. And if somebody is very bossy, maybe try to get more towards center in balance, right? To be thinking about other people and how they're feeling. So it's really important to understand the communication styles and how to, to bring out that self-advocacy, to bring out that, the initiation to speaking up for oneself. I'm just looking at the clock here. I want to make sure we have time at the end for, some of the questions that were sent in. But once again, the communication style: you order French fries with your hamburger, the server brings you onion rings instead. You tell the server that you asked for French fries, not onion rings. And what type of communication style is that? Speaking up for yourself. How many people will say, oh, I got onion rings instead of French fries. No, don't worry about it. I'll just eat the onion rings anyway. Don't want to bother anybody. No, you can speak up for yourself, right? That's okay. A friend forgets to meet you for dinner. It's the third time in 2 weeks. You tell him that you're upset, and you yell at him and tell him you don't want to be his friend anymore, and you hang up the phone. You're certainly expressing your opinion, right? And you're probably being extremely assertive, and you're hanging up the phone from them, maybe possibly blocking them, if probably a little more on the bossy side, right? Because nobody, you can be upset, you can be angry, but we don't need to yell at people either. You can, our actions, and I know it's very hard. I think that's a big practice too. We have our feelings and our emotions, and then how do we act within that, right? You feel like you are scheduled for too many weekend shifts at work, but instead of complaining to your coworkers, you talk to your manager. And you're speaking up. You're going right to, you're not complaining about it. You're not just venting about it. You're trying to address it and resolve it. And you're going to your manager and you're advocating for yourself, which is really nice. John has been listening to music at work and Mary finds it distracting. Mary says, it's hard for me to work with the music on. Can you wear your headset? Once again, she's speaking up for herself. She's presenting it in a way that is, she's straightforward, saying how she feels, and not yelling, not getting angry at John. And once again, it's important to speak up. She needs it quiet for her to work. Brian and Dan need a ride to the movies. They don't really like Josh, but they know he has a car. They call him up and ask him for a ride, even though they really don't want him to go with them. They just need the ride. Once again, are you going to just take advantage of someone just because you want their car, but you really don't care about them? Is that the way that, is that sincere? Is that genuine? Jessica hates her electric razor. It doesn't work well and it hurts. She asks her guardian to give her a disposable razor. He gives her no reason, but tells her no. Jessica says nothing back, just accepts his answer. Very shy, right? Afraid to speak up for herself, and just takes the razor, and it hurts her. So once again, you can stand up for yourself. You can say, no, I want, this is what I want. And once again, you will be getting these PowerPoints. You'll be getting the PowerPoint. There are also some handouts that we will be providing. We have the links that will be provided in the chat for everyone. But you will get this PowerPoint, and you can kind of go once again through all the different things about consent and speaking up and the examples that you might want to use or expand on, with your child or with your loved one. And so these are just, once again, more, role playing. So I'm going to stop sharing right now. And yeah, I just want, I think there were some really good questions that I think it's important for us to touch base on. And yeah, I wanted to make sure that we have time for that.
Of course. So if anybody right now has any question that they would like to put either in the chat box or in the Q&A, you're more than welcome to. And I'll read them out for Beth as she can answer. Some of the parents and guardians that did register did have some questions. So I'm just going to read a few of them for you, Beth, and then we'll go through them. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. So the first comment / question that one of the people who registered today put is this consent a form that you have to fill out on behalf of your children?
So for consent, you can actually have a consent assessment conducted for your child. There are people who specifically do it to understand as far as sexual consent goes. I think that it's an important tool to really an educational tool to understand what your child knows or doesn't know regarding relationships and consent for for intimate relationships as well. And I think it's best to be used as an educational tool to say, okay, these are the areas that my child is weak in or doesn't have knowledge in. Let's educate them so that they have the knowledge and they have the information to understand what it is to be a consenting adult. It doesn't guarantee that, nothing is a guarantee that someone will not be in an unfortunate or in a risky or an abusive, unsafe situation in their life. But the better that they are educated, the safer that they are, you reduce the likelihood of that happening. And to find out people who do, I think you have to contact I think that's a big challenge right now, is finding who is available to do consent relations. You could do consent assessments if you are interested in them. I would even say through contacting Elevatus Training, if they do know who in your area, I know does do consent assessments. They had they're actively involved now in training people to do, training teams actually to do consent assessments, and which are really, really important, because I think, and to look at them as an education tool. What does, and to find someone who can do a consent assessment that is individualized and meets the communication and the learning style of the individual. Because just because a person is not verbal doesn't mean that you can't do a consent assessment. You just find a way that they can, be it with visuals, whatever, that a consent assessment can be done. Mm-hmm.
And Bethan, can you explain just a little bit more about the consent assessment in general and kind of like what it entails?
I'm
Or
not
if you know.
real familiar with it. I
Mhm.
know, they really want to know in a consent assessment if your understandings behind the the implications of being intimate with someone, as far as the risks involved, as far as sexually transmitted infections, what can be the result of having intimate sexual relationships, what are the different types of intimate sexual relationships that there are. That's I believe that is what it entails, and to be a consenting adult, that legally differs from state to state.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you really have to see what state you're living in, and and find that out. And it's I'm still working on finding out a lot of that stuff, because it's hard. It's hard to find
Mhm.
the information. It's hard to find the information. And just because you don't assume because someone has an intellectual or developmental disability that they cannot be a consenting adult.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And we had one of our guests write in the Q&A box. Do you know of any agencies that offer psychosexual counseling or sexuality counseling in New York City? Should I reach out to Elevatus to inquire of any possible providers?
Yeah, I personally don't. I would certainly reach out to Elevatus Training. They're really a tremendous source of information. I would, if there is anyone, if anyone here that is already in, I would say, like the OPWD networking and has a care manager, that I would reach out to your care manager as well to find out if they have if they know of people,
Awesome.
or if
Thank you,
you're
Beth.
for counseling, as well as for consent assessments, if they are aware of anyone that does that. Mm-hmm.
Okay. The next question is in Spanish, but I'll just translate it. So this parent writes, as a mother, how can I lower the risk of sexual abuse for my loved one? How can I support my son that doesn't understand the risk?
Yeah, I think it's by having kind of by going through what we did today, letting your starting to have having conversations with your child, having conversation about what's public and what's private, having conversations, letting your child say no. accepting their no, not not making them be affectionate with someone that they don't want to be affectionate with, even if it's grandma and it's just a simple hug or a kiss. You don't have to. Giving them that sense of body autonomy and hearing their voice and answering questions that they have in an honest manner to the best of your ability, I think is really, and knowing that having those thousands of teeny weeny conversations along the way, that they know that they can come to you and you will listen to them and you will hear them and you will right, let's just listen to their listen more than you talk sometimes, right? And and not have a strong reaction to questions that they ask, that they're like, oh, I don't want to ask a question.
Another parent commented, our son is not currently sexually active, but may wish to be at some point. Basically what they're asking, how can they prepare him for the future if he chooses to engage sexually with another consenting adult?
I think once again, it's finding the talking about healthy relationships, finding supports around you that you can have these discussions about what healthy relationships are, the different, what sex is all about, the implications, the pros and the what can happen, and what can happen when you are intimate with someone, understanding once again consent, that you can be in a loving relationship, but you still have to ask somebody's permission for something, right? And to the people that are surrounding your loved one, are all giving positive messages and giving consistent messages across the board. And finding networks where you can talk with other parents and see what other people are doing and how do we work through this. Yeah.
Okay, I see we have one of our attendees raised their hand. So Beata Catalfamo, I'm going to allow you to speak right now so you can pose your question. Beata?
Yes, hi, how are you?
Hello.
Good, how are you? Do you have a question for Beth today?
Yes, is there any literature, like picture-wise? My son is turning 15 in a couple of weeks, and he already has, the body urges and having hard time. When I ask him a question, if he wants to talk, he covers his ears. Very kind, very gentle soul, very happy, person, but just, I don't think that he even knows how to describe what he's feeling. The younger brother doesn't understand what's happening to the older brother's body, and they share a room. It's really hard to connect, and I'm a single parent. Any video, appropriate video that I can show him, or any...
Yeah, no, excellent questions. And I would say, how hard is it for all of us to articulate how our bodies are feeling? And especially if, someone has a lot more challenges in that, it's just so hard. And I think a lot of it is right through visuals. I would say, if you, once again, you go onto the Elevatus training site, they do have resources on there. And I know that they are specifically actually actively working on creating sexuality education resources for that are really visually based, right, and not as much of verbal communication, because it's that the question that you're asking, so many parents are asking, and so many of our children have of many modalities of learning, right? So it's that's really important. I would say that there is another site, it's called sexpositivefamilies.com. They have a lot of really good information. And there is another organization, another website, it's called amaze.com. AMAZE, and they have wonderful, very short animated videos, which are, the animation really is, they're fun and they're fast, and animation is just really attractive, right, to watch and catches people's attention. And they have videos on just a myriad of topics. So, and usually, I mean, they really hit all the topics. So I would suggest trying, those through Elevatus training on our resource page, Sex Positive Families, and amaze.com.
Yeah, and I also included the link to Amaze in the chat for anybody that wants to look at it. Also, another of our guests today, Carrie Ann, mentioned in her Q&A that there's an age-appropriate book called What's the Big Secret? It's a great picture book, she says. So thank you for
There's
that
another
recommendation.
picture book out. It's our bodies. I mean, if you were to Google books about, our bodies, there are several now that they're coming up and they're coming along. And so it's just really great to be able to sit down with a book and either read to your child or to let them, as well spend time alone with that book and look through it and process that information. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
Awesome. Also, one of the questions I had, since we were looking at the examples about coercion and consent, how do we help individuals identify like the signs of coercion or being pressured into something?
I think oftentimes I would say the best way is through our own actions and interactions with our children. Is also not to, to say, to once again, when you're said no, or to accept that no, and not to push them, come on, let's do it. Or if, the brother is saying, hey, let's go do this. I know you don't want to do it. Come on, we do it. And say, no, they said no. Listen to your brother, listen to your sister. It's okay, Johnny, that you said no to your brother, right? And I appreciate you saying no because you're standing up for yourself. I think it is giving examples day to day. I think it's living that with your own children and expecting the other people around your children to live that, and let your child hear that you are expecting that from other people around them, that they will hear those lessons, and then taking those teachable moments from movies or TV shows or social media and say, look what happened to them. How did they feel? Were they pushed into doing something that they didn't want? How do you feel about that? Yeah, I think that is the little day-to-day 1,000, conversations across a lifetime that you have.
Mm-hmm. We have another guest that raised her hand, Miss Lewis. So I'm just gonna let her permission to talk. Miss Lewis?
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, good
Yes.
morning.
I'm just, going over what you just said. And my son's 19 and his body is changing. And usually when my family and I would watch TV and it come up to a racy part, we would just turn it off or change the channel. And my big takeaway today is, how can you teach them about sexuality and consent if you're not even going to let them view what could happen?
Well, and that's, it's a really good question and a huge challenge that you're asking because, because there is such a lack of education for our children, and it's such a difficult topic to talk about, and that so much of what are the messages that they are receiving on social media or on television and in movies about relationships are, right? And is that, you see those racy scenes. I mean, is a healthy relationship, those crazy racy scenes of, wherever they're occurring, right? Are those healthy relationships? Is that really what intimate relationships are about? And it's, I think that if you let them see that, I think it's really important to be with our children and observe what they are watching, and then have those conversations with them about what's entertainment, right, and what is real life, and what are healthy relationships, because the social media and what we see around us we're bombarded everywhere. And how do we deal with that? And will they at some point or another, our kids are going to see these things, right? Because we can't block everything. We can't. And so I think, once again, that the conversations and educating them that what you're seeing up on that screen is not real life. It's not real life. It's entertainment. Yeah, I think what you're saying is a big struggle, because our kids can't live, if they just live in a bubble and we don't let them see anything and we don't let them have the conversations either, then we're not educating them.
Awesome.
And so it's finding that balance. Yeah, it's finding
Thank
that
you so
balance.
much,
So
Ms. Lewis, for
I
that
always want to
question.
see what my son is interested in and what he is watching, so you can have talks to him about it. What do you think about that? Is that healthy? Was that, or did they ask if they, permission for whatever, for kissing, for this or whatever it be it sexual or not, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and we had another guest comment. It's important to draw the distinction between how-to YouTube videos and porn.
Yeah, it's yeah. And once again, porn is I think that if you do have the discussion about they're gonna, it's easy to come across porn, right, without even realizing it. And to have, if you are to educate your children about porn is not, that is not about healthy relationships. That is not that is not how people really interact in their intimate, healthy sexual lives. That they understand the difference, and not to use that certainly as as your guidebook to life. And yeah, it's such a struggle, because the social media and safety on social media. And I would say, kind of going back once again to elevators training, if you go into the resource section, there are resources there as to how to deal with all of the information that is coming, the messages that are coming to us through social media, and how to address that, and safety. And I think, once again, on those like Sex Positive Families and on amaze.com, they address that, how to talk about it.
Well, we've come to the end of our webinar today. We do have one last question. I want my clients to see the Zoom event. Will this subject matter be covered again? So we did have a 3-part series with Elevatus. So we had our first one, which we did, I believe, back in August, if I'm not mistaken. Today, which is about consent. Actually, on the 27th of this month, we'll be covering supporting people with IDD to become sexual self-advocates. And you guys will be getting the presentations, the handouts, once we follow up via email. So you can definitely share that with anyone that you would want to share it with. And our videos are up on YouTube and Facebook, should you want to revisit them. And I also just lastly wanted to say that Synergia is also working with Parenthood of Greater New York on this project called Project Shine, which is to address inequities in sexual health by ensuring accessible education and health services for youth with intellectual and developmental disabilities, ages 16 to 24, and the people who support them. So currently with PPG and Y, as well as with AHRC and YI and a few other network partners, we're creating a toolkit that will be accessible for everybody to visit once it's completed. But basically, it's going to be a tool where both caregivers, parents, and youth with developmental and intellectual disabilities can visit to basically explore sexuality and have certain questions, answers, and see things, definitions of different body parts, anatomically correct or slang even, just so they're able to be educated on the subject, because a lot of the times they're a little left out on this particular subject, and we want to educate them so they're able to make the best safe decisions for themselves. So yeah.
Yeah, and I just wanted to thank you. And I just quickly on the slang, I think that when our kids they come home and they hear all this stuff, and they throw the slang words at you, and say okay, do you know what that means? And I'll say, I don't know what it means, but they hear it, say that's a slang word for this is the real word, that's a slang word. And without a huge reaction, if you can. It's not easy. But I think that's really important because you're hearing so much language all over the place. And I just wanted to finish by saying this is, something that I picked up actually from sexpositivefamilies.com. And it's about sex positive parent wins. And I will probably say win-wins, because if it's everybody's winning, ourselves and our children. What did you achieve this year, and what will you continue into 2023? Honestly, answering a sexual health question from my child, share a sex positive book or resource with my child, and so much more is available now, which is so exciting. Using the actual names for genitals instead of nicknames. Share a sex positive resource with another caring adult. Do not force your child to give or receive affection, and you nurtured your own sexual health, because we got to take care of ourselves as well if we're going to take care of our loved ones. And I'll always say it's about progress. It's not perfection. It's a journey. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Beth. And
Thank
for
you.
everybody that's still online, once you close out the Zoom today, we will have a survey. So if you could totally please complete that, that'd be great for us. And yeah, we'll be following up with everybody via email with the PowerPoint presentation and the handouts. And if you have any more questions, please just let me know. You can reach out to me via email. I will put that in the chat for you guys. You can reach me at tcalderon@synergiany.org. And if you have any questions for Beth, I can definitely follow up via email with her. And I'm sure she will be glad to answer them.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much.
For the opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.